wonderful stories and comments came in over time about pump action rifles, and the people were saying things like, Mike, how come you don't talk about pump actions more, and for that matter lever action rifles? And fair enough. Somehow I get stuck on these bolt action rifles and others, but I agree with you, pump action rifles are probably some of the most useful firearms, whether it's a shotgun, a 22, or a high power rifle. I took out the 7600 yesterday that we looked at in a video. I don't know if it's out of whatever post-production yet. I had trouble putting it away. It's 35 Whalen, such a great rifle. Anyway, I've had lots of pump actions, and for some reason they're not all that popular in Europe, or at least it seems like they're not that popular in Europe. I'm not sure why. It could be legislative reasons in some jurisdictions. I'm sure there might be limitations. I think that's the case in the UK. Very sad, but probably true. The straight pulls, some of them are maybe as fast as the pump actions, so I don't know why pump actions wouldn't be used, but all your comments are right on, and I agree. I should talk about them more. So I went to the vault and wanted to get the Model 61 Winchester I have. You probably know that model. And I found a little sign in the empty spot in the rack, Winchester 61 Mint, and then in brackets Eric. So I guess Eric has my my Model 61. But I had to mention that one right off the bat, because probably if you're making a video on pump action 22s, you should have a Winchester Model 61 on the table, which I don't. But that's definitely worth mentioning. The Winchester Model 62 is another one. Probably maybe the best known is the 1890 Winchester with the hammer. I actually don't have an 1890 right now, but I've had a few over the years. But I have a Rossi copy of it, and actually the Rossi copy is quite excellent. I'll make a video on that rifle alone. It's made in Brazil. But what I can show you are still what I think are two classic 22s. This was a Remington 121. And again, it carries that Fieldmaster label. And I mean, it's a lightning fast action, and I'm not quite sure why everybody thinks, or most people think, that the Model 61 Winchester is a superior gun. I'm sure it is, I just don't know why it would be. But this one I've fired quite a few times. It came to me without a rear sight, that happens, and then somebody took off the front sight but put a blank into the dovetail, which kind of completes it nicely. And somehow I talked to someone, or maybe it was the owner, and he did most of his shooting without sights, and he was shooting birds on the fly, which you would think is impossible, but it's actually not that difficult. And you may not be aware of this, but people even hit birds with arrows. So 22 is faster than an arrow. Anyhow, I'll try to find a rear sight. It's a takedown. You might know that from whenever you see this kind of screw with the coin slot, then it's probably a takedown. It's not as slick, these older takedown systems, and I try to avoid actually taking them apart. Maybe it's just me, but I never have an easy time sliding them apart or sliding them back together again, but I have done it, maybe not with this rifle. The rest of the features of the gun are quite familiar to you from other tubular fed rifles. Again, this is an old school rifle, so it's properly made with steel and walnut. The finger grooves are quite practical. So is the shaping of the stock. There's no provision for a scope mount, so people could probably tell me, what date it was from, and also those markings on the barrel. Sometimes I look them up if I remember. Safety is cross button, typical. It's quite small, like dainty, and then it has a very subtle bolt release. It's right here on the bottom. It's actually easy to miss it. So all that does is, right now it's locked. So if I pull the trigger. Of course it's empty, but sometimes people don't like doing that. So you just release this and pop out a loaded round. Or if it's an empty chamber, you can always open the gun. And other than that, it has an aluminum butt plate. And there are different variations and versions of this 121 and its predecessor, the 12. So high marks to this one, and if you come across them, I think you'll be surprised how quickly they fire and how excellent they are, like almost all pump actions. And before I lose my train of thought, I'm sure you're probably aware Marlin made a pump action that looked a lot like the 1890. Savage made pump actions. I think Henry makes pump actions right now. They're all over the place. There aren't that many centerfire rifles that I'm aware of. There's the Remington. I had some standard arms, but that's more of a eccentric kind of rifle to own. I had a Savage 171. It was in 30-30, and I had one in 35 Remington as well. You could look that up, the one. I think I've got the model right, and the 171. And then from Belgium came this just excellent trombone, they call it, because of the way pump actions work. The release is in the trigger guard on this one, not so subtle as on the Remington. And I'm pretty sure that these are all over covered in YouTube videos and other videos, but I thought I'd show you the ones I have in my collection. It has again the coin slotted screw for takedown, and the action is slightly different from the Remington. I would have to say it's very slick, and you can see the magazine tube moves with the handles, so they're one piece. Well, they're not one piece, but they're assembled that way. This should be in, and actually a lot of common features with all of the pumps. There are only so many ways you can make them, and this one I've had for years. It's gone through several hands. You know, I put my rifles out there and people use them for a couple of years or whatever, and then they come back to me. At one time I thought this was a replacement stock, but I think it's probably the original, and someone maybe took 4-0 steel wool and cleaned it up, and of course it's got a steel butt plate. And I wish I had more 22 pumps to show you, but right now this is all I have. And as they show up, I'll definitely make videos. But your comments are meaningful, and definitely you should buy a pump 22 and have at least one or two in your collection. I mean, for practical hunting, you probably can't beat a pump action. Everybody's running to these bolts these days, but that's just because of popularity. And semi-autos are fine, but they've always got that semi-auto feature, right? They reload themselves. I don't know. If you have kids, maybe it's not a bad idea to get a manually operated action. And the pump is just as fast if you want it to be as the semi-auto, but you have to cause the reloading, which is a good thing. So that's about it for now. Not really a heavy-duty, big meaning video, but probably worth looking at. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Join me on Patreon and Instagram, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.